Welcome to Zoho Flow's webinar session. In today's session, we are going to see about outgoing webhooks in Zoho Flow. So before going into the session, here are a few general announcements. Audience will be on mute by default. And if you have any questions, you can use the questions tab and our support people will be answering your queries over there. And in between, we'll be pushing some polls. Please do participate in that also. And the recording of this session will be sent to everyone. So we have a poll coming up your way. Please do participate in it, and then we can start the session. So yeah, in today's session, we are going to see about what is a webhook and what does the send webhook action in Zoho Flow does, and key terms involving in a webhook. And we'll see a demo about how to use this new feature, which is the send webhook action feature, and then best practices about using this outgoing webhooks. And then at the end of the webinar session, we'll have a quick Q&A session where you can raise your queries. In between also, if you have any queries, you can raise it using the questions tab. So what is a webhook? A webhook is a way to send real-time data from one application to another application. So in Zoho Flow, we already have incoming webhook trigger option. So we have a webhook trigger already in Zoho Flow, using which we can receive data from an external application. Now, with the help of this outgoing webhooks, we can send data to an external application. So that's what this outgoing webhooks does. And with related to webhooks are usually event driven. So if something happens in that application, some event happens in an application, that is called an event, and for that event we can call a webhook. So for example, in Zoho CRM, if a new lead record is created, that is considered as an event, and for that event we can call a webhook. So now with the help of this send webhook action, we can create that lead record itself in Zoho CRM. So that's the difference between the incoming webhook and the outgoing webhook. And a webhook uses these request methods. So get, post, put, and delete. So these kind of requests can be performed with the help of this send webhook action. So in Zoho Flow, we already have around 1,000 applications for integration, and also all those applications have different set of actions. If in case your action, the action which you are requiring is not there in Zoho Flow, then you can make use of this send webhook action. So if the API which you are looking for or the action which you are looking for is not available in Zoho Flow, then you can use the send webhook action to push data to that application or that API. So you'll be having some applications which are small applications which you use internally in your organization. So those kind of applications can be interacted with the help of this send webhook action. And all the data updates which are happening using the send webhook is instant, because webhook related actions are always instant. So these are real-time data updates. And authentication part, the webhook works based on some kind of authentication. So it also stays the same. So how a send webhooks work? So if a flow is triggered and the send webhook action is called, whatever API or webhook URL which is configured inside that action will be performed, and then the remaining actions which are connected will be performed. Like how a normal flow action works, in the same way, the send webhook action will also work in Zoho Flow. So some important terms involving these outgoing webhooks. So headers are nothing but the authentication details which are sent in that webhook. So a webhook, when it is received, it will have some authorization details in it. Those details are called the headers. And access token and refresh token. So these kind of tokens are used to create connections without the need to log in using the credentials. So you don't need to provide the username and password to create a connection. Instead of that, we can make use of these tokens to create the connection. And auth profiles. So when you are connecting to a third party application, you need to first create an authentication profile. So based on the kind of the authentication that application is under, so you have to create an authentication profile for it, and then only we can create a connection for it. different kind of applications works based on different authentication. So basic authentication is one kind of authentication which works based on the username and password. So you can just provide the username and password, and then you can create the connection. OAuth version 1 and version 2 are token based access. So you don't need to input your credentials or anything. And the token will be generated for Zoho Flow and the connection will be created based on it. And API key, few applications works based on this API key. A secret API key will be provided in your application, the third party application which you are going to use. So you need to copy that API key from that application and use it in Zoho Flow to create the connection. So these are the different kind of authentications which are supported right now in Zoho Flow. So basic authentication, OAuth version 1 and 2, and API key based authentication. So API methods in outgoing webhook. So different kinds of API methods can be configured. So get is one method and it is used to fetch the data, and post is to create a new data, input is to update an existing data in the application, and patch is for partial update, and delete is to delete a record or whatever data from that application. So whatever API calls you can make from Postman, so those kind of calls can be done with the help of this. So use cases, as I told, the application, if the application which you are looking to integrate is not in Zoho Flow, then we can check if that application can be somehow connected with the help of this send webhook action. So here in this case, a new lead is created in CRM, and for that, I need to send an SMS to that particular lead and say if that say, SMS application is not available for integration in Flow. So we have Filio and Vati, and so some kind of SMS related applications we already have. But if in case the application you are using is not there, then maybe we can find a solution using the send webhook action. So somehow we can create a connection with your third party application, and based on that we can send data using the send webhook action in Zoho Flow. So let's see how to use the send webhook action in Zoho Flow. So I have a flow here which works based on a schedule trigger. I have set it to schedule daily. So it's going to get the rows of the customer details who are still under the pending status of payment. So in this function, I have given the spreadsheet ID and the worksheet ID of the sheet, and search column, the column based on which I need to fetch the rows. So it is the status column, and the value which I want to fetch is pending rows. So I've provided it. Now I'll quickly test the flow to show you how this function is working. So schedule daily trigger, if I turn it on, it will trigger at that particular time only. So for testing purposes, we'll use the test and debug option. The function is executed for the status pending, and it has returned the data of the rows which are having the status as pending. So 3 customers were under the pending statuses, and those customers has been returned, but the data is returned in the JSON array format. Now, if I want to send this data to another application, or maybe based on this JSON data, I want to perform additional action needs. In Zoho Flow, looping of actions is not supported. So if you receive an array of data, in that array of data using the Zoho Flow action, we can perform the action only once. Now, let's see how to use the send webhook action to send this data to another flow or another webhook URL. So drag and drop the send webhook action. It will be available under the logic in webhooks, send webhook, drag and drop. Now, two different methods are there in the send webhook action. One is no authentication, and another method is use a connection. So connection methods we have seen in the previous slide. So first we'll see about the no authentication method. So Zoho Flow already has webhook triggers. So that webhook trigger comes under this no authentication method because it works based on the Z API key, which is provided in the webhook URL of that flow. So I'll create a new flow, webhook flow for notification. So the first flow will send the JSON data to this webhook trigger flow. And then based on the data received in this flow, I'm going to perform a certain set of actions. So configure, here is the webhook URL. So we have to copy it and provide it in the request over here. And the request type is, we need to post data to that webhook URL. So the method is post. So it will create a new data in that. And in the body, we can configure the data which needs to be pushed to that particular webhook or API, whatever URL you are providing here. So the content type is by default JSON, and this function has returned the data in the JSON format only. So I'm mapping the data which is being returned, and the response type is also JSON. So now once the data is provided and the request URL and the request method is done, we can save the action and turn on the flow to test it. But in the send webhook action, we have provided this test option using which you can test this particular action alone instead of testing the whole flow. So here you just need to provide the URL which you are going to test and provide the request method. In body, pass the data, whatever data you are going to pass to that application. So since I'm just running this particular action, I'm manually providing a data to trigger the webhook. So I'll provide a sample JSON data. So now test the flow. 410. Okay. So 410 error is thrown when the webhook is not turned on or live. So we have to make sure either the webhook is under testing mode or it is under live. So I'll execute the webhook again. Okay, 200 means the webhook is called successfully. So now when I check here, the payload is received. So the URL and the post method and the data is passing fine. Now let's check with the actual data. So let's test with the data which is being written by the function. So retest here. And then in the send webhook flow, to perform the send webhook, I'm testing the flow again to trigger it. The function has returned the data. So the same criteria status is pending. So name of the customers and other details are fetched. And to the send webhook data, the data of that fetched records are being passed. And the output status is 200. So the data is received here. So now the inside the array data, I have three customer details. So three rows has been fetched here, and I need to send notifications to each customer separately. So now here in the advanced settings, there is an option called trigger flow for each entry. So this option is to trigger the flow for each entry of an array in the payload. So suppose if you are receiving an array data with two objects inside it, then this flow will be triggered twice, and each object of data which is coming inside that array will be considered as separate execution. So I have enabled this option and click on done. Now we can connect whatever action which needs to be performed after the data is being received. So I'll use the notification action, which is send email. So once we connect the send email, we'll get whatever details which are sent from that send webhook. So whatever details from the rows fetched, all the field values are written here, which can be used for mapping. So in the to email address, I am mapping the customer email. Subject we can customize, payment still pending. For I can use the mappable field. So order ID, hi customer name, payment is still pending. So like this, you can customize the body and click on done. Now let's turn on the flow. Now we have configured the send email. So the first flow will push the data which are fetched by this function, and whatever row details which are fetched are being sent to the next flow, which works based on webhooks. And this flow should send the notifications to the individual customers. So I'll test this first flow again. It has pushed the data to the webhook trigger flow. Now let's check the history. So yeah, three customers were there under the pending status. So if we check the execution, the first customer name is Bobby. It was fetched. The customer status is pending, so it was fetched, and the email was sent to the customer, because in the to email address we map the customer email. Similarly, for the other customer rows also, the email will be sent separately. So our Zoho Flows a webhook trigger doesn't require any authentication, because when we provided the URL itself, the required ZAPI key and everything was inside that itself. So it didn't require any authentication. Now, if in case you are going to connect an external application or a third party application, then you have to choose this user connection method. The rest of the things are same. The request type and the body parameters, everything is same. The format is same. The only difference is before performing the request, you should create a connection and use it to perform the send webhook action. So if you click on new connection, first step is to create the auth profile as I told. So you have to first define the kind of authentication which is in that application. So if it is basic authentication, you create a auth profile with that application name. And in the next step, you need to provide the username and password which is required to access that application. Similarly, I have created some auth profiles which works based on OAuth 1 and API key. I couldn't show it here. I'll show some screenshots about that. So this is for an API key connection. So I'm connecting Slack with the help of API key. So in that case, we need to provide the API key and give a connection name for it to click on authorize. And then this is how a OAuth version 1 and version 2 auth profile will look like. So first you need to register this Zoho Flows detail in that application. And based on that, a client ID and client secret will be generated there. You have to provide it here and the required detail should be provided. So you have to refer the application's API documents before creating that connection. So the details will be provided there. So based on that, we have to create the connections here. So this is for the basic authentication which we saw. So all you need to do is just give the username and password. So once the connection is created, you have to just select the connection and make sure the relevant API which you need to perform is pasted and the request method is also configured similarly. And the body field, based on the type of data that application expects, you can return the data in that format also. So if you are receiving the data in JSON format, and if you want to return the response in a different format, you can configure it here. Suppose if that application is expecting a plain text format of data, then you can use this text response type. Similarly, if it expects a XML type, you can go ahead with this XML type. But by default, JSON will be the format for all the things. So this is how to use a connection and then send webhook based on that. Now there is one more option also over here. So this checkbox is to connect on-prem applications. So we have this Zoho Flows on-prem agent based on which we can connect on-prem applications also, which is desktop applications which we are using. We can connect with it and send data to those applications also. So we have covered this topic, the on-prem agent, in one of our previous webinars. You can check it out, where we have explained about creating this on-prem agent and installing it in your desktop wherever the application is installed. And based on that on-prem agent, Zoho Flow can interact with your desktop application. So you have to create an agent and use it and make sure the agent is active and then provide the required URL HTTPS method. You can use HTTPS methods, you can call webhooks, or you can perform API calls also from here. So we have few on-prem applications already in Zoho Flow, but if in case you are having internal on-prem application which runs on your server or something, then you can go ahead with this on-prem connection. And we can also perform commands and scripts also with the help of this on-prem agent thing. So only the authentication types and everything will change, but the sending of data and the request types and everything stays the same for all the cases. Yeah, like this, you can use the send webhook action to call webhooks or APIs or connect with any of the external applications with the help of the custom connection option. So best practices to follow while using outgoing webhooks or the send webhook action in Flow. So test with the sample data. So I showed you how to test the webhook or the API which you are going to call from the send webhook action itself. You can test with the sample data before making the whole flow going live. And then AP documentation will be available in the application details itself. So whatever application you are going to connect, you just refer the AP documentation once to create the connection here. JSON will be the default format, so no issues with that. And error handling. Okay, since we are connecting with third-party applications in this case, and if there are chances that this action might fail, so in this case, you can make use of the on error branch which we have in Zoho Flow. So the red circle, which is to the right side of the action, is called the on error branch. So to this branch, you can connect any of the actions which you want to perform if it fails. So since we are connecting a third-party applications, sometimes the API might take more time to execute. In Zoho Flow, we have a limitation of 90 seconds for an action to be executed. So the same applies for the send webhook action also. In case if you are sending a bulk data or you are sending a data to an API which is facing a traffic at that moment, and if that execution is taking more than 90 seconds, then this action might fail. So in those cases, you can get it notified to you when the send webhook action fails. So I can use this end email action to the on error branch of this action. So you can configure your email address so that you are notified when this action is failing. Something like this can be the subject, and the execution time can also be notified so that you can directly come and check that particular execution from the history. So this mapping will give you the exact date and time at which this execution triggered. So current date and time. And then if you want any other details from your above actions or the trigger, you can configure that also, so that you can debug based on that for which execution the action got failed, and then based on that receive notifications accordingly. So yeah, with the help of this send webhook, we can connect with external applications now. So third-party applications can be connected, and customized APIs can also be called. So APIs which you are handling in your organization application. So this applications which you use internally across your organization can also be connected with the help of this send webhook action. So that's all about the send webhook action. Thanks everyone for joining the session today.